Hello again, this is Sabrina Moreland, one of the librarians from Walters State, and this time I'm going to share some helpful information with you about MLA style. And I'm going to talk about the Works Cited page first, and then move into a little bit about your in-text and parenthetical citations and proper documentation. So the first thing are these containers, this information about containers and elements. So on the Works Cited page, all those entries need to have these elements as long as they're available. For example, if you're looking at a website and you can't figure out when it was last updated or published, then you would skip that information. If you couldn't figure out who the author was, you would skip that information. So you just need to include the information you have access to for this part of your paper, so the Works Cited page. Now you know the Works Cited page is the last page of your essay, and it contains all the sources you cited. These are the works you cited in the body of your paper. So anytime you quote or paraphrase or reference any work, any book, article, website, it has to be listed on the Works Cited page, or it can't be there, either way. And the entries are listed in alphabetical order by author's last name or by the title of the work if the author's names are not available. I have examples from the Purdue OWL site to show you, so if you're interested you can always take a look at that. Yours will probably not be this extensive, but this is just what a really well done Works Cited page should look like. Author's names, alphabetical order by last name. Here we have no author, we just have the title of something. We skip the article, and go with Inconvenient Truth, and that would go in there after H. So this is a good view of what you should go by for your own Works Cited page, even if it's just one or two sources in your own paper. If you watch my video on different types of sources, I'm going to show you some examples of those sources I told you how to access, how to evaluate. That's just a quick review of those, but each of them have their own sort of formula for how they should look and appear on your Works Cited page. So an academic journal article then follows that formula in yellow. Author's name, title of the article, name of the journal, volume, issue, date it was published, page range, name of database. So if you got it from EBSCOhost, you'd put that. If you got it from Gale, like an Opposing Viewpoints database or something, you'd put that. The digital object identifier, or the URL, and then the date you looked at it, the date accessed. And so I have an example here below that. And there are two authors, and so this is how you create a citation for two authors. We have those listed. The Measuring the Beginning, a quantitative study of transition to higher education, is the title of the article. From the journal Studies in Higher Education, the volume, the issue, published November 2019, pages 1523 to 1541, from EBSCOhost. And then there's the DOI that the database gave me. Okay, if you watch some videos I'm going to share on how to navigate those databases, it will give you what you need. And then I looked at it on March 21st, 2019, and that's the way we write the dates in our Works Cited entry. Now below that, I have what my parenthetical citation would look like if I were to quote or summarize or paraphrase from this article. I have two authors, so I have to put Bruman and Darwent in there, no comma, and then a page number, so 1533 or 1530 rather, for example, in my parentheses. Notice that punctuation follows the right parenthesis. So that's an academic journal article that you could get from a database. This is a periodical, so a magazine, a newspaper. This is the formula for a magazine, but the newspaper one is pretty similar. So again, author's name, title of article, title of magazine italicized, any sort of bigger piece. So if a chapter comes from a book, the book is the container that's italicized. If it comes from a journal, it's italicized. If it comes from a newspaper, that newspaper is italicized. Date it was published, URL, access date. So in this example, Logsdon John wrote, "The costs of human spaceflight are high. History shows the benefits are too." In quotation marks, right? The title always does that. Time is the magazine, the 10th of September 2018. There's the URL, and I accessed it the 30th of September 2018. Now, this was an electronic source and did not have page numbers listed on that page that I was viewing. So in my parenthetical citation in this case, I would only have to include Logsdon in my parenthetical. So that would be that example. For a book or an ebook, there's a little bit of a different formula for an ebook, but you can look that up. We'd have author, last and first name again, title of the book italicized because we might be using parts of the whole book. If there's an edition, you provide that. If there's an editor, if there's a different version and so forth, you would include that information. Publisher name, year of publication. And so we have Brown, John, Snakes in the Appalachians, Foretelling Our Environmental Future, all italicized, published by McGraw-Hill, 2007. Now, because this is a book, chances are there are going to be page numbers. And so for my parenthetical citation in this example, I would have Brown 37 in my parentheses. Again, no comma, no year, nothing weird, just the author page method. For a website, now web pages are a little different from websites or different from an article from a website, so you have to decipher the type of source you're looking at. And sometimes, like I said, there are components missing from those core elements that we talked about a minute ago. And so in this case, you would skip the author if it's not available, and you'd begin with the title of the article or the section or the tab or the page, whatever it is you're looking at. And that would be in quotation marks. Title of the website would be italicized. If you can notice a publisher or sponsoring organization, you would include that. The date it was published or last modified, the URL, and the date you accessed it. So here I have an example. Again, there's no author, so How to Communicate with Parents is the name of that piece. 0 to 3 is the name of the website. Sometimes the sponsor is the same as the website, so you don't repeat that if it's the same. 2018 was the only publication information I could find. That's usually at the bottom somewhere. It might just say copyright 2018, or there might be a range. The URL and accessed on September 30th, 2018. Now, in my parenthetical citation, I would put How to Communicate with Parents in quotation marks in parentheses, because whatever appears in your parenthetical has to match what's in your works cited entry, that first part of your works cited entry. That's like the whole point of this, is so that your reader, your instructor can view your sources and where things came from. Now, of course, we're doing all of this to avoid plagiarism. You all know what plagiarism is. Anytime you use anybody's idea or thoughts or whatever, words, you have to say where it comes from. And that could be a direct quote or something you paraphrase. So no matter what, if it's not your own thoughts, you have to document it. And there are times when there's intentional or unintentional plagiarism happening. And so if your instructor put your work through Turnitin or something, and you didn't mean to plagiarize, it happens. So you just have to be really careful. Okay, so always document where your stuff comes from. And there's a difference between quoting and paraphrasing. So on the left, this is a direct quote from a book, Bears the author, page 89. And on the right, when you paraphrase, you actually show that you're translating the main ideas of whatever you're looking at into your own thoughts and words. So I didn't just change one or two words. Like, I condensed it a little bit, and I showed the reader of my paper that I know what I'm talking about. I have processed what the book or article, whatever, said, and I've put it into my own way of presenting that information. So even though this is not a direct quote, you still have to say it came from Bear 89. Okay? Proper documentation. When you're using those quotes and so forth, you need to lead into that quote or whatever it is you're doing. You have to explain up front why you're including that information, using an informative sentence or a signal phrase to show that. So an example would be in an article from Time magazine, that's the, leading in, Grossman points out, quote, that sleep consistency appears to be just as important as sleep duration and quality when it comes to academic performance, end quote. I'm leading in saying this is where this came from, and the guy that wrote it said this, right? So it's not just a dropped or dumped quote. So that's just whenever you randomly stick one in, or you don't do anything to lead into it. So you guys have done paper 2 by now, and you've used that Postman and Sampson article. So if I were just to put in a dump quote from Sampson, I would just have this store manager quote standing on its own. There'd be nothing explaining it beforehand. Okay, and I just have Sampson in there. There's a little bit of a difference between in-text and parenthetical citations. We usually use those terms interchangeably, but you always use the author page method. So if you're using an in-text citation where the author's name appears in the sentence, you would still have the page number in parentheses at the end of your quote or paraphrase. So author page. And again, you have to cite paraphrases or direct quotes. And so for the parenthetical citation, you have to have the author and the page number in the parentheses. And I have some examples to show you the difference. So on the left is an in-text citation. According to Thomas, there's the quote, page 47. So Thomas's name appears in my text. On the right, and this is kind of a dropped quote here, only 17% of students agree with the decision, Thompson 47 in the parenthetical citation. Okay, so that's the difference. You lead into the quote or the paraphrase with your author or title, and you end it with your page number, or you put everything in the parenthetical citation. A couple more examples. This is from that Postman article. This is a paraphrase from it. In-text citation, Postman points out, right, and so forth. And then I say it came from page 308. And then if I were to do the same thing with a parenthetical, I'd have to reword it a little bit to lead into it. And I'd have Postman 308 in my parenthetical citation at the end of my sentence. With Sampson, who did not have page numbers, I could say, according to Sampson, and have the quote. Now, because there were no page numbers listed, I don't have to put one at the end of my sentence. In the parenthetical citation, again, I'd have to sort of reword how I lead into this. I would end it with just Sampson in the parentheses, because again, there's no page numbers. So same concepts presented in both the in-text and parenthetical citations. The difference is just where you put the author's name. Here are a couple formatting tips. So all titles centered, Times New Roman 12-point font, 1-inch margins. Page numbers, there's a certain way to do your page numbers that I'll explain in just a second. For your works cited page, if it's just one work, it'll be work cited. But if it's more than one, in plural, works cited. And then all your entries have to follow hanging indent, double spaced, and space between paragraphs. You have to watch that. You don't have to have all this memorized, of course, and I have to look up stuff as well. So very quickly, on the library page, you go to that page and you go to citing your sources. We have an MLA guide that has formatting your paper, so that could help with that first part. Screenshots, all kinds of good information, using quotes and so forth. The Purdue OWL site is also fantastic. Go here all the time to get help with stuff. And on the left is how you navigate. I'm using a periodical, I'm using an interview, I'm using a YouTube video. You just have to navigate on the left and determine what type of source you're actually using. So a page on a website, an ebook, and so forth. And it gives you examples and formulas for that. And of course your MLA handbook. This is just a page. If you look up these colleges or these libraries and companies, I'll send the links to your instructor as well if you want to play these games, or since we're stuck inside, might be a fun way to pass the time if you're really bored. But that's all I have. Here's my contact information. Please don't hesitate to ask me if you need any help, and thanks for listening.